Good morning, everybody. It's going to be a little while before we are set. Lois, please email me. I'll forget by the time this is done if you can't change it, that number is yours. Thank you. How are we today, everybody? Hi, Sky and Coral. I don't know who owner is.
Morning.
Morning. I miss you guys.
Good morning.
Good morning. I miss you too.
Can you guys see that at all? Are you able to read that at all?
A little bit.
A little bit. I wonder if I just need to share on, do we all have our trail guides to look at? I may just choose to screen share. Let me see what I can do about that. Screen share. All right. I am trying to figure out how to screen share with you guys before we get started. Especially if you can't see the board behind me. All right. Can you guys see a PowerPoint opening at all? I don't think you can you?
Yes. It says Microsoft.
Are you able to see me too, or just strictly the PowerPoint?
Just the PowerPoint.
Okay. All right. As soon as that's open then. Have we got it?
Yes, I see it.
All right, good. So we have, looks like everybody's on. I want to wait just a couple more minutes just to see if anybody else joins us, but it looks like we have Sky, Coral, Carla. Hi, Carla. Hi, Jay. Lois is in there, and then owner. I don't know who owner is, but it looks like we have almost everybody here. Feel free to unmute if you have any questions. We're gonna kind of review the leg and foot. You guys already did pelvis thigh with Dave. So today we're gonna go through the pelvis foot part of it. And then we will, the leg foot part of it today. And then on Thursday, we're actually gonna do a review of the diagrams and everything like that. So today we'll kind of go over these muscles. We'll do some highlighting and stuff like that. And then Thursday we'll be doing a review of the diagrams that are on the test and all of that good stuff. Sound good? Stop me if you have to at any point in time. All right, so leg and foot. So we're gonna kind of just go over this view that we can see right now. And I like these views because they kind of help you know what you're looking at when you're massaging, where you can see the flesh and bone. Sometimes it's kind of hard to figure out where certain things are when you have somebody on the table. We don't have the benefit of seeing the bones or the muscles, etc. So, I mean, the patella is a pretty easy one, and we know the popliteal fossa is that area that we kind of avoid on the back of the knee. And if you feel right below the popliteal, that kind of bump on the, just under the kneecap, the patella, I mean, you'll find the tibial tuberosity that you can feel. And then we have the pes anserinus attachment site. And I also will give you guys some mnemonics when we get to those muscles to help you remember some of the muscles that attach at that pes anserinus. Our gastroc is that big calf muscle. Tibialis anterior, just outside of that painful shin bone. If you guys have bumped that tibia before, you know how painful that can be. Tibialis anterior can be really tight if somebody's getting shin splints and things like that. Shows us the shaft of the tibia, the calcaneal tendon, lateral malleus, medial malleus, which is the ankle. An easy way is to say it is the ankle area. The tendon of the tibialis anterior, which if you're in a place where you can flex and point your feet, you can see that tendon pop in and out of the tibialis anterior, as well as it's usually sometimes really easy to see the tendons in the foot, including the extensor digitorum longus tendons that come out to our toes, especially if you have a particularly bony foot. All right, so then we're looking at the realistic view of the foot, and you can see where the metatarsals would lay on the foot. Sorry, I'm going back because I gotta figure out how to hide this so I can see. There we go. So then you see what we call the ball of the foot, the arch of our foot. And actually we have another arch around the ball area. When you hear about fallen arches, sometimes it's that natural curve of the bones. And the ball of the foot area, the ligaments and stuff in there start to weaken and spread as we get older. And that's why flip-flops are so bad, is we've got those two different arches in our foot that can start to give us a lot of problems when they start to fall. You'll see the heel, right where the calcaneus lies. That's that bony heel bone. And again, you can see the tendons of the extensor digitorum longus, hallucis, which is the one for the big toe, and that tibialis anterior view. No highlights right now, just kind of jumping into it a little bit at a time here. Let's jump forward to this nice view of the lower leg, or what we call the leg. I don't know if you guys have realized now, we call the upper leg the thigh. And when we say leg, we're talking about the lower leg. So we're looking at knee, leg, and foot. And as you'll notice, we have where the femur comes down and the patella laying right over it. And you'll notice the tibiofemoral joint. So the actual joint is the tibia coming up to the femur. Just like we learned about the ulna is like the shorty for the radius. I mean, the radius is the shorty for the ulna. Kind of the same thing with the fibula. It's kind of what I like to say is the shorty for the shoddy for the tibia there. So the joint at the knee is actually the tibia coming together with the femur. And of course, we name those joints after the bones that come together. So tibiofemoral joint. We kind of know where to find that one, right? You have a proximal tibiofibular joint as well, which is where that fibula comes up and meets the tibia. And then we have the distal tibiofibular joint as well, where the tibia and fibula come together. And then a talocrural joint, if you remember when we learned our regions, and we learned that the front of the leg is the crural region, and it's easy to remember that because it's cruel if someone kicks you in the shin. So we have the talo because of our tarsals, and the talus, crural joint, where the talus comes together with the tibia. Any questions? Stop me. If not, I'm moving right on along into the foot. Calcaneus, you'll see, and that is an aerial view of that bony heel. Talus is kind of up on top. Then you have the cuboid, navicular, our cuneiforms, which we have different names for when we get further into it, the medial and the intermedial, etc. And we'll break those down a little bit further when we get just into the foot on a different page. And I'll have a mnemonic for you guys to remember those as well. But we have talus, cuboid, navicular, the cuneiforms, our phalanges, just like in our fingers. We have interphalangeal joints. And instead of metacarpal phalangeal joints in the foot, metatarsophalangeal joints. Our metatarsals, intermetatarsal, and metatarsal joints. Say that one 5 times fast. Our tarsals and our transverse tarsal joint. All right, so we're gonna look at some of the bony landmarks here. And like I said, when we do our review on Thursday, we'll do just the diagrams that are on your test. Somebody has birds that I hear, it sounds lovely. Anyways, so we look at that tibia, and we should be familiar now with our condyles, our bumps, right? We have a medial and lateral condyle. So remember, we're always thinking of anatomic position and thinking about whether we're looking at anterior view. So this is anterior view of your right tibia. So tibia, T, toe, big toe. So if you get confused when you're looking at a view, think of tibia being on the big toe side, and then you'll remember that the tibia on the big toe side is where the medial malleus and the medial condyle will be, on that side with the big toe. Tibia, big toe. So we see our medial condyle and our lateral condyle. And then we have a tibial tuberosity. And if you guys remember, a tubercle is a small bump, and a tuberosity, a city is bigger than the small bump, so tuberosity, tibial tuberosity. Then we have our pes anserinus, and you can see that is kind of it is actually the site, attachment site for that tendon we'll learn a little bit more about, and there are some good muscles and important muscles that attach in there at the pes. Sometimes I call it the PA, but I want you guys to remember it as pes anserinus. Don't try to initial that one. You see the shaft of the tibia and the shaft of the fibula, and then down on that tibia we have the medial malleolus, which is right around our ankle, and on that fibula the lateral malleolus. And this is just showing us the posterior view of it, so looking through the calf side where the gastroc is. And you can see we have the intercondylar tubercles, which is kind of conda, remember, is kind of ligament, and that means that's up where that articulates with the femur, right? And you can see there's a groove for insertion of the semimembranosus tendon. And we have the soleal line. Got the head of our fibula. Then we look at kind of at the shaft of the tibia and fibula as we're moving distally. And then again, on the posterior view, we have groove for tibialis posterior and our flexor digitorum longus tendons, our medial malleus, our lateral malleus, and then we can also see a fossa of the lateral malleus, and we know a fossa, malleolus, sorry. A fossa is an area, a groove area where a muscle will lie or attach. I'm going to continue on if no questions. All right, so we're going to check out the patella here. Does anybody remember what kind of bone the patella is? Just out of curiosity. Anybody want to pipe up? Somebody want to Google it for me? I'm going to wait till somebody answers or types it. Get to Googling, you guys.
Is it free floating?
It is, but we're looking at, remember we have long bones, short bones.
It's a flat bone. No?
It is a flat bone, but it has that odd shape. It's a sesamoid bone that we learned about early on. Think of it as kind of looks like a fat sesame seed. It's a sesamoid bone. And when you look at the front of the kneecap or the patella, you will see we have the base and the apex. It's a pretty simple bone to label. And then when we look at the posterior view, we have the medial and lateral facets. So remember, we're looking through and behind, and facets where something articulates with the bone beneath. So you can see then when we move around and we rotate it and extend and flex our knee, we've got to have that facet where it can kind of articulate with the bones beneath it. And if you look at your back at your picture on page 346, you can kind of see where it lays and how it needs to be able to kind of rotate around on that femur, and that apex comes right down into that proximal end of the tibia there. So we're not going to go through a lot of these bony landmarks because we're going to do that when we get on to the, let me go forward on you guys. Although this is pretty cool, take some time when you have a chance and actually move around the kneecap a little bit on your own, and you'll find that you can get, sometimes it's tight and it needs a little bit of shift. And if you've done your lymphatic massage with me, moving that kneecap and getting some movement there to help with lymphatic fluid movement is one of the things that we do when we do the lymph massage video. We kind of make sure that kneecap is moving and floating. And these are just some good views to look at, and I am going forward because I want to get to, here is our pes anserinus. And what I want to do is give you guys a little mnemonic. So let's see if I can stop share for a minute. Actually, is it just as easy for you guys if I just tell you and you write it either on your book or on a piece of paper? If you want to give me a thumbs up or down, or you want to just say yes or no, that's up to you.
Yes, that's good.
Okay, all right. So you see where we see the pes anserinus attachment site and the three muscles that are attaching there to it. You see the tibial tuberosity, and then we have that tendon, which is the pes anserinus, and the tendon itself. You have the sartorius, gracilis, and semitendinosus with a T, and we've always remember those by say grace before T, T-E-A, like before you drink your tea, say your grace. And that's always just been a mnemonic. That's one I learned in school. Say grace before T for the semitendinosus, sartorius, gracilis, and semitendinosus. So if that one helps you at all to remember those muscles that come into the PA tendon, then write that little mnemonic down. It'll help you out. Also, by the way, pes anserinus means goosefoot in Latin. It kind of looks like a big, flat, spread out goosefoot, I guess, if you look at it just right. All right, we're going to go forward now in to the foot again, just kind of going over, because now we're looking at the plantar view. So if you look at the little picture of the foot in the yellow box, that is the view we're looking at the underside of the foot. When we're doing reflexology, this is usually the view we have. If our client is supine, when we're massaging the foot, this is our view. So you can see the phalanges, the ball of the foot where those sesamoid bones are, our metatarsals, and then this bottom part here, we have the medial, middle, and lateral cuneiforms, the cuboid, the navicular, the calcaneus, and the talus. So we still use the mnemonic with this. They used to call the middle cuneiform the intermediate cuneiform with an I, and that's when this mnemonic came around. But you can just spell milk with 2 M's if you want. But the mnemonic for that one that helps you remember is never totally consume curdled milk. MILC, or you can do MMLC. So T for talus, the navicular is the N never, navicular, T totally, talus. Consume, calcaneus, cuboid, curdled, and then middle, lateral, cuneiforms, milk. Any questions on that? Mnemonic to help you remember those bones of the foot when you diagram it? Let me know. Never totally consume curdled milk, and milk you can do MILC or MMLC if you prefer, since they call that middle cuneiform middle now instead of intermediate. We're going to move on. If any questions, stop me. So we're just breaking down those bones again so that you can see the shapes of them there, where they're separated. You can see the middle, lateral, and medial cuneiforms, where they come up into the metatarsals. The talus kind of comes on top, is on top of that calcaneus, and that calcaneus is that bony heel. And just a lateral view, that side view from the pinky toe side, looking across, you can't really, looks kind of like the talus is still on top of that calcaneus when you get that view. And then a medial view. And we're going to skip ahead here to page. We'll do a couple of the bony landmarks here, I think. All right, so this is our calcaneus then. That's that heel bone. You can see it has the body, perineal trochlea, articular surface for talus, which we know that means it articulates with the talus that sits up on top of it, and the articular surface for the cuboid. And then when you look at it from the medial view, you can also see you have tuberosity there, a groove for flexor hallucis longus. Hallucis, remember, is like big toe, right, or thumb. Longus tendon and the sustentaculum tali. Say that one 5 times fast too. And we're going to go skip ahead here, and now we're coming into the talus. And the bony landmarks on the talus. We have the trochlea. We have a lateral tubercle. Remember, these are lateral views. On a lot of the bones, we usually give like posterior and lateral, but these are lateral and medial views. We have the lateral tubercle, the neck, because we know when a bone has a head, there is a neck. The tarsal sinus, which is an opening or a canal. And a lateral process. So we know that's on the lateral side, right? Medial view, you can better see the head from this medial view. You can see the neck, the trochlea, and the medial tubercle. And I do want you guys to see where on this view that I'm showing now, and this is them just exploring the 2nd through 5th metatarsals. When we're massaging, we get really hung up on the areas on the bottom of the foot, but we really should be massaging in and around the phalanges and the metatarsals on top of the foot as well, getting that blood flow moving and everything. And as we get further into all the muscles that run down into the foot, you'll see why you don't want to ignore that dorsal side of the foot, not just pay attention to that plantar side.
Pickles! Hi, neighbor.
All right, so let's jump into the muscles of leg and foot, and I will let you know again when we have some highlights happening. You can see here what you guys already learned, those hamstrings coming down. And if you look on the side that is the posterior view of the left leg, you can see where the plantaris lies deep to that gastroc, right? But if you look at it on the right side where they've done a cutaway of the gastrocnemius, you can see how that plantaris comes down across the knee joint. And we've learned what about muscles that cross a joint? Anybody remember? If a muscle crosses a joint, it is involved in the movement that takes place in that part of the body. So that one would be involved with some sort of flexion, right? Because it's crossing that joint there. All right. So we come down and you can see the gastroc has that division that we can see of the heads of it. And it's really, when somebody, especially if somebody rides a bike a lot, like they're competitive cyclist, you can really see that, that definition on the gastroc, the gastrocnemius, we call it gastroc for short. And lying deep to that is the soleus. So if you look at the cutaway view of the right leg, you can see where the soleus lies underneath. And a good bit of that soleus is that tendinous middle area. And they come down and they combine together into that the calcaneal tendon, which attaches to our calcaneus. Go figure, right? And in behind that, you'll see tendons of flexors of ankles and toes, the peroneal tendons, the retinaculum. And we have a lot of retinaculum all around our foot, which basically is helping keep all those muscles and tendons kind of together. Excuse me. When you have plantar fasciitis or tendonitis in the foot, a lot of times that retinaculum doesn't do a very good job anymore. I had plantar fasciitis and then I broke the 5th metatarsal in my foot, and the retinaculum and the ligaments and everything let that foot start to spread. So now I just have a lot more problems on that foot, and I had to go up a shoe size as well, because when my foot became a little bit wider, it wouldn't fit into my normal shoe size. So all of the retinaculum and those ligaments and everything that keep those bones together, when there's a break or something, it can really start to cause a lot of foot problems. And of course, us Florida folks in our flip-flops don't help it out very much, do we? And now we're just looking at an anterior view of the right leg as well as a lateral view. And we're looking at the patella and kind of where that tibial tuberosity is. And you can see the shaft of the tibia coming down. And you can see how that gastroc kind of protrudes out even from the anterior view. Our peroneus longus is kind of out there next to that tibialis anterior. You can kind of see the soleus there in behind the gastroc, kind of sandwiched between the gastroc and the tibia. We have the peroneus brevis. So we have longus and brevis, and longus, of course, longer, brevis, more brief or short. Then we have our extensor digitorum longus, hallucis longus, look at one coming right down to the big toe. And so extension of the toes is kind of opposite. Remember, muscles on the front of the body tend to flex and muscles on the back tend to extend, but our knees and our toes are on backwards. So when you curl your toes, you are flexing them, and when you straighten them out and up, you are extending them. And that extensor hallucis longus is going to pull that big toe up, as well as the digitorum longus. And then we have our peroneus tertius tendon, and you can see that kind of comes down to the outside of that pinky toe area, that outside metatarsal there in the toe. Sorry, I forgot my words for a second. All right, you guys, I'm going to continue on unless you stop me. I want you guys to jump over to page 3. Actually, let's see. I want to look at this view as well real quick. All right, so some of the muscles from up above on the thigh that you've already learned are kind of important because you want to see how they come down onto the tibia, right? And that we know then they're crossing that knee. They're going to be involved in some sort of flexion or extension or in a bent position, rotation of the knee. You can see where your semitendinosus comes down. Remember, say grace before T. They're all attaching down into that pes anserinus tendon. You can see your vastus medialis, gracilis, and sartorius. You can see the tibialis anterior. Because we're looking at the medial side, it's going to be kind of around on that opposite side of the tibia there. You can see your superior extensor retinaculum, and that again is some of those sheaths that help keep everything stable. You can see all the retinaculum, the flexor retinaculum down in the lower part of the foot as well. You can see your extensor digitorum longus tendons coming down again, and the hallucis coming to the big toe. You can see some more of the inferior extensor retinaculum. So now we have the flexor hallucis longus. So we looked at the extensor hallucis, but the flexor, of course, is going to do what? It's going to curl our toes, right? So have you guys ever been swimming before and your toes just curl right up into a cramp? So now you know it's that flexor digitorum longus and flexor hallucis longus that are the guilty for that. And you can go back there and massage around where the calcaneal tendon and soleus are to help release that, as well as tibialis posterior. And that's a really good area to massage anyways. It can be quite painful if someone has plantar fasciitis, but can be really effective in helping to release plantar fasciitis. Working soleus, gentle on the calcaneal tendon, and up through the gastroc and all of those muscles, the hallucis longus and the digitorum longus, etc., when somebody's got those issues going on in plantar fasciitis in the foot. And then we have the medial view again. We're looking at tibialis posterior and that flexor digitorum longus and hallucis longus, flexor hallucis longus, how they come down. And you can see how they come down and wrap in and under into the toes. And if you're looking and you realize that's a medial view, when you're massaging somebody's foot, are you massaging on that inside edge of the arch as well? Not just the pad of the foot and the arch, but in and around that side, around the heel, up and around the malleolus and everything to help release all of that. Now we do have some endangerment sites around malleolus. You wouldn't use a lot of pressure, but you can really build a great clientele, repeat clientele, when you can give a good foot massage. If you have anybody who's in any kind of athletics, running, basketball, tennis, we tend to, especially with tennis, we tend to address like tennis elbow and the rotation and the rotator cuffs and all of that. But anytime you're bouncing up and down on your toes, rocking from your ball of your foot to the heel of your foot or anything, don't forget to give that really good foot massage all the way around. All right, you guys, I want you to turn to page 369, and here is my favorite part of each section of the book, because you can actually see the muscles that are involved with the actions. So plantar flexion, you can see from the book that's standing up onto your tiptoes, right? If you were to stand up on your tiptoes right now while you're watching and listening to me, you're going to feel what muscle? You're going to feel that gastrocnemius, that gastroc and that soleus are heavy hitters there in plantar flexion. Then of course you have your tibialis posterior, your peroneus longus and peroneus brevis, and those assist. And I want you, and so this is of the ankle, right? If we're doing plantar flexion, that movement is coming through the ankle. And I want you to highlight those first 5 muscles, the main 3 heavy hitters, gastroc, soleus, and tibialis posterior, as well as the 2 assists, the peroneus longus and brevis, for plantar flexion. That is a highlight. So now we're looking at dorsiflexion. So while you're sitting there, kind of bring your toes up into the air, roll up on your heel. So that ankle, dorsiflexion through the ankle. And again, you're going to feel like if you bring your hands down onto tibia, that bony shin, and just lateral to it, and then you rock that foot up into dorsiflexion, you're going to feel that tibialis anterior tighten up. So you can see why tibialis anterior is going to be one of the big muscles, one of the big culprits in shin splints. If somebody's running and they're striking on their heel when they run, or they're doing a lot of rocking on the foot. So massaging the front of the leg, finding the tibia, and you guys know if you've taught, if you've learned massage therapy with me, I will go right in stripping. We're going to loosen it up. If anybody has stable, can you guys still hear me? Yeah. Tibialis anterior, extensor digitorum, and extensor hallucis longus are highlights, you guys. Dorsiflexion. Know the muscles of dorsiflexion, okay? All right, and then we're jumping on over into page 370, and we're just looking at the movements of eversion. So eversion is when you rock towards the outside, right? So the big toe is coming in, kind of the inside arch of the foot is coming in. I'm sorry, during inversion, not eversion. My apology. And those muscles that are doing that movement, and then eversion, you're rocking the other way, right? You're kind of rolling to the outside of your foot and seeing those muscles involved in eversion. So if you have somebody who's a runner and they pronate or supinate, and we know now what pronation and supination means, if they tend to invert or evert their foot when they run or walk, and you'll be able to tell if their shoes are worn on one side or the other. You'll know the muscles to address on that person when you're giving them a massage. And then you can also look at flexion and extension of the second through fifth toes, because we know the hallucis is responsible for just the big toe. You can see how they come down underneath the foot for the flexion, and the extension comes down over the top, straight out to the second through fifth toes. And then the same thing for the big toe. All right, so we're jumping into gastroc, you guys. So the gastroc and the soleus, and we're going to go over the gastroc first, but I want to give you a little bit of information. We're on page 371 in your book. The large muscle mass of the posterior leg is composed of the gastrocnemius and the soleus muscles. Together they form what is known as the triceps surae, because that's the sural region, remember, that attaches to the strong calcanean Achilles tendon. And I want you to highlight Achilles tendon. That calcaneal tendon is what we call the Achilles tendon. So not a highlight, but both the gastroc and soleus are easily accessible. And then again, I want you to highlight the superficial gastrocnemius has two heads and crosses two joints, the knee and the ankle. That was a highlight. So therefore we know it's responsible for movement in both knee and ankle, right? Emerging from between the hamstrings tendons, the short gastrocnemius heads extend halfway down the leg before blending into that Achilles tendon. Although its name is Greek for belly of the leg, it suggests that the gastrocnemius is rotund, is actually quite thin when compared to the thick soleus. So it looks like a big belly, especially when you look at it. It's really pronounced on somebody, like I said, who's a cyclist, but it's fairly thin compared to soleus. I want you to highlight the soleus is deep to the gastrocnemius, yet its medial and lateral fibers bulge from the sides of the leg and extend further distal than the gastrocnemius's heads. Continue highlighting. The soleus is sometimes called the second heart because of the important role its strong connections play in returning blood from the leg to the heart. So it's important for blood flow, and that's a good NBLEX question right there. So make sure you put a little asterisk next to that one, that the soleus is sometimes called the second heart. Its strong contractions help pump blood back up. Because remember, our extremities, our legs and our arms, with that returning blood, have those little valves. That's why we get the varicose veins and things like that. So having that muscle contraction in the arms and the legs is what's helping return that depleted blood back to our heart. Coming into the gastroc, the diagram that you see on your screen right now and on page 371, I want you to highlight its actions. It flexes the foot at that tibiofemoral joint, and it plantar flexes the ankle. And it inserts, I want you to highlight the insertion as well, at the calcaneus via that calcaneal tendon, which is also called the Achilles tendon. And it is innervated by tibial nerve, S1 and 2. And for some reason, when I'm screen sharing, it does not let me see if anybody is sending me any chats. So if you are, you may have to unmute with your questions because it doesn't let me do both for some reason. I have to figure that one out. All right, so we're moving now into the soleus. Its action, plantar flexes the ankle. You can see where it's located. So plantar flexion, pointing the toes like a ballerina. So you could imagine they have very strong soleus if they're dancing on their toes and constant plantar flexion. So highlight the action, plantar flexion. Its origin is the soleal line, proximal posterior surface of the tibia and posterior aspect of the head of the fibula. I want you to highlight its insertion. Same place as the gastrocnemius, the calcaneus via the calcaneal tendon, and innervated by the same nerve as the gastroc, tibial S1, 2, but as well as L5. And here's just a good view of that gastrocnemius and soleus. You can kind of see a hand, you see a cutaway of it. And on page 372, the calcaneal tendon, originally called the Achilles tendon. As a baby, the Greek mythological warrior Achilles was dipped into the river Styx by his mother to make him invulnerable. He was completely immersed except for the ankle by which she held him. So a little tidbit of history there. After fighting in the Trojan War, he was mortally wounded when an arrow penetrated his heel, hence Achilles' heel. Your weakness is your Achilles' heel, right? It refers to the small but fatal weakness. And when do you use your gastroc in your soleus? I want you guys to highlight this box. Peeking over a fence when standing on your toes. Walking, running, climbing, virtually all forms of ambulation, which means movement. Carrying a heavy backpack up a steep hill, and pedaling your bike up the grueling hairpin turns of the, anybody want to say it for me? Because I'm not even going to attempt it. In France. And we are jumping forward then to the plantaris. I want you to highlight the plantaris is a short muscle belly, but the longest tendon in the body. And look at that picture. Look at the tendon. Comes all the way down to the calcaneal tendon, right? So we have a lot of muscles that come into that Achilles tendon. Not highlighting, but its belly lies at an oblique angle along the popliteal surface of the posterior knee between gastrocs head. Its tendon extends down the length of the leg and attaches at that Achilles tendon at the calcaneus. Its plantaris belly is situated in a small cramped area. It can be readily accessed, right? And you can see when they show in that diagram of the thumb accessing the plantaris, they are right at the head of the gastroc. Now, again, we have that endangerment site there, so you wouldn't want to just press straight in on that muscle. It's weak plantar flexion and weak flexion. That's not a highlight. It originates at the lateral supracondylar line of the femur. I want you to highlight. It also inserts at that calcaneal tendon. We're going to move over to the popliteus. As its name suggests, I want you to highlight this. The popliteus is located in the popliteal space. And I like to write pop lock when I look at the popliteus because it can unlock the knee. This muscle has a small short belly with diagonal fibers lying beneath the upper fibers of the gastroc and plantaris. It is the deepest muscle of the posterior knee. I want you to highlight that. It is the deepest muscle of the posterior knee. Because of its depth, the popliteus is inaccessible. Nevertheless, its tendinous insertion on the posterior tibia can be palpated. I want you to highlight, although the popliteus is a weak flexor of the knee, it is vital in unlocking the joint from an extended position, hence its nickname, the key which unlocks the knee. Super special highlight there, you guys. I've seen that both on our tests, Massage Prep, and MBLEX. It unlocks the knee. We're coming over to peroneus longus and brevis, known also as fibularis longus and brevis. And if you notice, it originates at the head of the fibula and 2/3 lateral edge of the fibula. So that's why peroneus longus and brevis is also known as fibularis longus. And I want you to highlight that. Known also as fibularis longus and brevis, the slender peroneal muscles are located on the lateral side of the fibula. So when you reach down to your shin, you feel the bony tibia, you know that tibia is on the big toe side, fibula is on the pinky side. And so you know that very lateral outside edge there is where peroneus longus and brevis are. They lie between extensor digitorum longus and the soleus, and a portion of the brevis lies deep to the peroneus longus, yet both are accessible. I want you to highlight the action of both longus and brevis. They both evert the foot. And if you need to go back to eversion versus inversion, then just remember to jump back to that page that gives you the movements on page 369 and 370. Eversion rolling in one way, inversion rolling out the other of the foot. They also assist to plantar flex the ankle, and I want you to highlight that as well, both of them. And then if you look on page 377, that lower left diagram, I want you to put a little highlight around that box. I don't know if it comes up on here. It doesn't. No, it doesn't give it to us on the screen, but it is not uncommon for there to be a third peroneal. If present, the peroneus or fibularis tertius. Highlight that, tertius. Will be found anterior to the lateral malleus on the front of the ankle. Oddly enough, the tertius is actually a short branch of the extensor digitorum longus that attaches along with the brevis at the tuberosity of the fifth metatarsal. So sometimes there is a third peroneus that we call the tertius, which tertius tetra tri 3, right? When do you use your peroneals? This is not a highlight. Scraping mud off the inside edge of your boot. So that's E version. Think about how you scrape mud off the inside. That'll help you remember what is E version versus inversion. Hiking on a rocky trail, ice skating, or skate skiing. I don't know what skate skiing is. If anybody knows, you can enlighten me. Right, you guys, we're gonna move on along to extensors of the ankles and the toes. So we're looking at extensors, tibialis anterior, extensor digitorum, extensor hallucis longus. This slide doesn't give you the information on page 378. If you will join me on page 378. These extrinsic muscles are located on the anterior aspect of the leg between the shaft of the tibia and the peroneal muscles. The tendons of all three muscles cross beneath the extensor retinacula at the ankle. I want you to highlight. Tibialis anterior is large, superficial, and the most clearly isolated of the group. It lies directly lateral to the tibial shaft. Stop highlighting. It's squeezed between tibialis anterior and the peroneal muscles. I want you to highlight. The extensor digitorum longus is partially superficial. Its four tendons are clearly palpable on the dorsal surface of the foot. Stop highlighting. The muscle belly of the extensor hallucis longus lies deep to the other two muscles, but can be accessed only directly, indirectly. Excuse me. However, like the extensor digitorum, its distal tendon is easily found on the dorsal surface of the foot as it leads down to the big toe. And we're looking at tibialis anterior here. You can see where it comes down to the base of the metatarsal. When tibialis anterior is tight, it can start to become very painful on that inside edge of the arch there. Again, a good place to massage gently. However, we usually also want to loosen up the belly of the muscle up top. But when you think about where these muscles come down and insert, or where they originate, you can see why a tight shin would start to give you soreness in your foot. If it starts to pull on that metatarsal, it starts to pull on the retinaculum and the ligaments that are holding the metatarsals tight, it's going to start to make the inside arch of the foot hurt a little bit. So we're looking at tibialis anterior. I want you to highlight its action. Inverts the foot and dorsiflex the ankle. Its origin is the lateral condyle. This is not a highlight of the tibia, proximal lateral surface of the tibia, and interosseous membrane. Medial cuneiform and base of the first metatarsal, and deep peroneal is the nerve. Extensor digitorum longus. I want you to highlight those actions as well. Extends the second through fifth toes. Curls them up, right? We learned that because our toes are on backwards. Dorsiflex the ankle, so turning the ankle up. So remember again, and I'll say this many times whenever I teach bones and muscles of the body. Our rule of thumb is muscles on the front flex, muscles on the back extend, except for our knees and our toe joints are on backwards. So muscles on the front of the toes extend the toes, muscles on the bottom of the toes flex the toes or curl the toes. So make sure you highlight actions for extensor digitorum longus. And the same with extensor hallucis longus. I want you to highlight, extends the first toe, dorsiflexes the ankle. And if extensor hallucis longus extends the big toe, then what curls or flexes the big toe? Flexor hallucis longus, right? Sorry about that. All right. right, so we're gonna move around to flexors of the ankles and toes, but before we get there, I want you guys to stop on page 380. I wish there was a diagram on here of 380, but there's not one. But I want you to look at that bottom right picture. See all the retinacula that wraps around the foot, almost like a bandage would wrap around the foot to help keep the muscles, the tendons, and everything kind of tighten in place. And how when that retinacula starts to tear from a lot of running or bad posture, bad walking habits, bad shoes, etc., how it really can start to affect the whole foot and the health of the foot. And of course, once the foot starts to go, the hips and the back will start to hurt. And it all really starts from our feet up. Feet are super important when it comes to massage because that will start to throw off the entire posture. A lot of times if somebody has a tight tibialis anterior, I'm going to discover that that hip, that side of the lower back, around the QL, glute medius, etc., that whole side is going to end up tight because it starts a whole bad posture habit in order to baby the foot or protect the foot, and it'll start to throw everything out of whack, and then that domino effect all the way up the body that starts to cause pain, soreness, tightness, etc. All right, so flexors of the ankles and toes. We are on tibialis posterior. And with tibialis posterior, I want you to highlight the action. It inverts the foot and plantar flexes the ankle. And there were no highlights on 381, by the way. I'm surprised. There's usually some kind of highlight in that introduction. I just want to look through it for a minute and see if there was anything I think is important in there that I've seen on MBLEX or Massage Prep. Deep to the gastroc and soleus. Inaccessible, except for small regions on medial side. Nothing there we really need to highlight. Flexor digitorum longus and flexor hallucis. No highlights there, you guys, but kind of look at those actions. Flex the big toe, first toe, sorry, big toe is not anatomical terms. Flex second through fifth toes for digitorum longus. So same thing as extensor, opposite action, right? And I want you guys to jump over to page 385. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else in here to see. 384, 385, you can see how many muscles come down. This is the plantar view or the bottom of the foot. When you're massaging the arch, the outside edge, and where you see calcaneus, you'll see flexor digitorum brevis, where it comes down, it attaches to calcaneus. And you hear people talk about when they have plantar fasciitis and that heel feels really, really bruised, and flip-flops can be a big culprit of that. We walk really flat-footed in them, and on top of that, our toes are usually gripping that strap between the toes. It's usually where adductor, the minimi, brevis, and all of those muscles are coming into the calcaneus. You're actually starting to get bruising or partial tear of that tendon right on that part of the heel, and that's why the heel, when you have plantar fasciitis, if you've ever experienced it, and your foot has stayed in a weird position all night, usually in like a plantar flexion underneath the covers, you go to step on the floor first thing, it feels like your heel is bruised or on fire. You can kind of see where those tendons come in, can be a culprit of that pain. Same thing here, just kind of looking at the underside again. And I want you to, on page 385, where it says muscles of the foot, that big box, I want you to put a big highlight around it. Because they bear the weight of the body when standing, walking, and running, the feet are sometimes known as the little soldiers. So this is just what I was talking about, you guys. In comparison to standing, walking, Increases the pressure on the feet twofold while running increases it fourfold. The stresses demand that the foot be designed for more than lying flat and idle on the ground. Thus, the bones and ligaments of the foot are arranged to form 3 arches. The medial, longitudinal, lateral, and longitudinal, and transverse. These arches connect with 3 points of contact, the calcaneus and the heads of the 1st through 5th metatarsals. And you can kind of see, and if you've ever taken a yoga class, a lot of times you'll hear us talk about what we call the triangle of stability, and that's making sure that we're grounded on those 3 points on the foot between calcaneus and the 1st through 5th metatarsals, instead of standing on the outside or inside of your foot, in order to get that mountain pose, which is that strong pose in yoga where your weight is evenly distributed. And that's how we're really meant to stand. Feet hip width apart, like maybe a 10% turnout at the hips is natural. Weight evenly distributed, not on one side or the other, so it doesn't start to shorten and impact the knees, the QL, and everything working up into the back. The 3 arches together raise the center of the foot, creating a structure that is ideally shaped to distribute and absorb the weight of the body. The arches also help the plantar surface of the foot adapt to uneven terrain while walking, hiking, or climbing. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about muscles of the foot, and you can see from this view here that we have tibialis tendon coming down. You can see the retinaculum again, the medial malleolus, inferior extensor retinaculum, the digitorum longus tendons and hallucis tendons coming down the extensors, flexor hallucis longus tendon, inferior retinaculum, flexor retinaculum, calcaneal tendon, which we know as our Achilles tendon, right? Flexor hallucis longus, tibialis posterior, flexor digitorum longus, and soleus in that medial view of the foot and ankle. We get into extensor digitorum brevis. There are no highlights on this, but I want you to notice those muscles, extensor, and look where they're connected to the 2nd through 4th toe. 2nd through 4th toes via the extensor digitorum longus. We're looking at the dorsal view. They extend 2nd through 4th toes. So you can curl those toes separately from the pinky toe. I mean, not curl, extend those toes separately, spread those toes out, everything like that. And the origin is the dorsal surface of the calcaneus. So top of our foot, dorsal view. Then we look at flexor digitorum brevis. Same thing, 2nd through 5th toes though on the flexor. Instead of extensor, 2nd through 4th. Flexor digitorum brevis, 2nd through 5th toes. So that one actually comes out to the pinky toe as well to be able to curl the pinky toe. Medial process of calcaneus and the plantar aponeurosis are the action and origin. Again, no highlights there, you guys. We have the abductor hallucis. So we know abduct, right? Abduct away from the middle line, so you abduct that big toe. It abducts the 1st toe at the metatarsal phalangeal joint, and it assists to flex the toe as well. And the same with the abductor minimi, digiti minimi. You can see where it comes out. No highlights there either. Flexes the 5th toe, assists to adduct the 5th toe and metatarsal phalangeal joint. And if you were in class with me ever, you saw my stupid human trick is on my right foot. I can move just my pinky toe without any of my other toes. Now we know which muscle is helping me do that, right? That 5th toe. Can't do it on my left foot. Try it out sometime and see if you can do it. See if you can work out that abductor minimi. Extensor digitorum brevis and flexor brevis. Again, no highlights here. I'm trying to look through and see where we have some more highlights in here. Not a lot. Do we have any questions so far, you guys? I guess when we get into the review of the review of the diagrams, we'll get more in depth in labeling all the bones and bony landmarks. So you can see where you palpate flexor digitorum brevis. It flexes middle phalanges of the 2nd through 5th toes, proximal interphalangeal joints. It originates at the medial process of calcaneus and plantar aponeurosis. The abductor hallucis, we already talked about. Abducts the first toe and assists to flex the first toe. And the minimi we just talked about for moving the pinky toes. All right, so we're getting into extensor hallucis brevis then. You can look at that small muscle. It runs from the dorsal surface of the calcaneus over to the proximal phalanx of the first toe. So one of the phalanges there of the first toe. And it extends the first toe. And then we have flexor hallucis brevis, going to do the opposite. You can see underneath it comes from the plantar surface of the cuboid and lateral cuneiform and comes out and inserts at the medial and lateral surfaces of base of proximal phalanx of first toe. And that one is going to flex the first toe. Same with hallucis, adductor. Of course, if we have one that abducts, we know we need to adduct. So you can see why. You see how it comes over? The oblique one comes over from the 2nd and 4th metatarsals over to the hallucis. And that transverse head, remember oblique at an angle, transverse running straight up, comes from the plantar ligament of 3rd through 5th metatarsal phalangeal joints. And they insert at the lateral surface of the base of the proximal phalanx of the first toe. So that's why they can pull it into a deduction. Also assists to flex the first toe. And it also helps to assist that transverse arch we talked about across the ball of the foot as well. We have flexor digiti minimi brevis, which is the flexor of the 5th toe. And it's base of the 5th metatarsal and base of proximal phalanx of 5th toe. And I can tell you, I broke my 5th metatarsal and I don't have very much feeling in my little 5th toe now at all. With that muscle and the retinaculum and everything in there's got something pinched in that outside edge of my foot, and little pinky toe tends to go numb on me. Right, we have quadratus, plantae. Remember the plantae vertebrae, AE. Anytime there's like multiple, we say AE. So the quadratus plantae assists the flexor digitorum longus to flex 2nd through 5th toes. It originates on the medial and lateral sides of the plantar surface of the calcaneus, and it inserts on that posterior lateral aspect of flexor digitorum and longus tendon. And I don't know if these slides are uploaded on MindTap for you guys. I will check because we're going through this week with hip, leg, thigh all week. So it's going to be open through till Sunday. I'll upload that if it's not already there. I'll double check. I'm going to write a note for myself right now of upload trail guide PowerPoints. That's got to be Sky that has the pretty birds I'm hearing. All right, we have the plantar interossei. It adducts third through fifth toes, metatarsal phalangeal joints, flexes third and fifth toes at the metatarsal phalangeal joints. No highlights here, you guys. We're just kind of reviewing these. The dorsal interossei, same thing, opposite action. You could imagine the plantar adducts and flexes, that the dorsal is going to abduct and flex. So opposite action instead of adduction, adduction, abduction, second through fourth toes, and flex, second through fourth toes. Then we have the lubricals of the foot. The lubricals, if you look at that view, flex the proximal phalangeals of the second through fifth toes. So proximal meaning closer up. So wiggle your toes around, you guys, where the toes come up and connect in that metatarsal phalangeal joint, the proximal end of the phalanges. That is your lubricals doing that work. And it extends the middle and distal phalanges of the second through fifth toes at the same interphalangeal joints. Comes from flexor digitorum longus tendons. So we don't get a lot into the joints, but the joint of the knee and looking at the knee is pretty important, because you're going to have people come in who have had tears in meniscus and or MCL, ACL, etc. So you can look at how complex the knee is. You see the femur coming down, and you have the articular cruciate ligament that comes in there. You have lateral meniscus and medial meniscus, and you can see it's almost like a disc, right? A cushion in there. You have a tear in the meniscus. It, I think, always requires surgery. I'm not really sure. I haven't heard anybody yet who's ever had a tear in the meniscus. When you have a tear in the MCL, medial ligament, or anterior crucial ligament, those are things that can be nursed back to health if possible, but you can see how complex it is. You can see kind of where some of the ligaments of the other muscles, the tendons of the other muscles come up when we look at the other view of the knee area. So here you can actually see the medial and lateral meniscus again. You can see the popliteus tendon coming in and around the knee. So we're in a posterior view now, the back of the knee. And this view right here, when you look at the superior view of right tibia, you can see where the ACL is. When you hear people have an ACL tear, you can see kind of where MCL and ACL come into the knee. Medial meniscus as well. So a lot going on in there that make the knee not stable anymore when somebody has a tear. This just shows you some more of the joints. The interosseous membrane is something that I want you to pay attention to and highlight. I don't know if it's on this specific test. I have seen it on ROPs, and I have seen it on massage prep and imblex, and it's that area that is in between tibia and fibula, the interosseous membrane. And there you can see some of those lateral ligaments. The fibula collateral ligament there, having a tear there is really painful, takes a lot of healing. Bursa of the knee. I'm trying to see if there's anything else in here we really need to go over. All right, I want you guys to come over to page 403 with me, please. Let's see if we've got a picture in there for this. foot and ankle, the joints here. I want to get into the retinacula. There we go, retinacula of the ankle. You can see all around the foot there. The tendons of the extensor muscles are supported by the superior and inferior extensor retinacula. And this is not a highlight. I just want to kind of go over this, what I talked about. See how it wraps around the foot and all of the tendons there? The superior extensor retinacula is broad and crosses the front of the ankle, just proximal to the malleoli. And the inferior extensor retinaculum is Y-shaped and begins distal to the lateral malleolus, so lateral side of the ankle on the calcaneus. It spans the ankle and then divides with one fork attaching at the medial malleolus. So it's really important, you guys, to massage all around those parts of the foot where that retinacula is to loosen up everything in underneath it. And when we finally are able to do hands-on, I'll have you guys do a little bit of palpation. We'll do palpation anyways eventually of the hip, leg, thigh, but I like to palpate around the retinacula area and get used to really massaging those areas, especially if you in any way get into sports massage. You want to get used to massaging those areas. All right, so we're going to look at flexor retinaculum as well. You can kind of see where that is located and the tendons that it goes over the top of. And when we get into palpation, we'll do that as well. I'm going to stop the share and see how we're doing. Do we have any questions? I'm trying to see if I see any chat. I don't see, oh, maybe one chat. No, no chats. Any questions, you guys, about anything that we covered? I know we kind of went through it fairly quickly. There's not a lot in the leg foot. The main thing is the muscles and the groups we went over in the like tibialis, posterior, anterior, peroneus, that whole group. If you missed any of the highlights, they're going to be, we'll go over them again tomorrow. And I didn't lecture the pelvis and thigh with you guys. I have a couple of mnemonics for that to help you remember some of those muscle groups as well. In addition to the never totally consume curdled milk that we already went over. There's the say grace before tea for the pes and serenus. And some others that I have for memorizing the adductors, and also some for remembering the glutes. And Dave might have done the glute one with you. Please quit oogling our grandma's glutes, and that helps you remember the deep six in the glutes. We'll go over all of that tomorrow, but I just want to see if you have any questions now about any of the highlights we went over, since that lecture went really fast. Did I go too quickly for anybody?
No, and it's Thursday, right?
Thursday, yes, Thursday morning. We'll do the review. I'll have the actual diagrams that I'll share that we fill in the blank that we'll study. And we'll go over the highlights again and any mnemonics to help you remember some of those as well. But please let me know if you have any questions. There weren't a lot of highlights in this section, but so I believe, Coral, that we're coming back. The plan is hopefully to start back on this coming Monday, but it's not definite yet. You should be getting calls to be polled. Some of you might, has anybody already gotten a call or been polled yet as to returning versus continuing distance?
We've
I
received
got
the
like a little
polls.
survey.
Anybody had any phone calls yet?
No.
No? All right. Yes, you were called. Okay. Who is owner? Will somebody tell me who owner is so I can make sure you get credit for being on here? Because if you don't let me know who you are, then I have Lois already. I know which one is Lois. But whoever owner is that just type, yes, I was called, if you can type your name in, please, so I can make sure you get credit. So everything will still be in place, and this is where we're trying to figure out how many students want to come back versus being distance learning, is that we will still have the 6-foot social distancing, 25% capacity allowed inside, no more than 10 at a time. And that is going to determine how many. Distance learning is only temporary, right? So more than likely distance learning will be ending at the end of May, I think. And of course, you'll be getting reached out to by Dave or somebody else. I'm going to type a message real quick, because I think whoever is showing up here as owner is not hearing me. Any other questions, you guys? Has it been hard distance learning, or have you guys enjoyed it?
It's great.
I hate it.
Great.
I
Yeah.
miss massaging.
You miss massaging? I miss getting massaged, you guys, and massaging, right? And soon, hopefully, we'll be able to do that. I know that the governor was meeting in Central Florida with some salon and massage therapists. And hopefully soon, but I think we have to wait and see if, as everything is opening, if there's any kind of spike at all, anything like that, so that we know that we, you know, can not pass this on. I know they think that they're worried. Owner could be Lois. I am on my computer and phone. Is this Lois that wrote this? No voice or video with my computer. Okay, so, but Lois, I have you showing up with a phone number also. We don't have two Loises, do we? I have owner, and I also have a phone number that ends in 1301. I have two people popping up. All right, you have two ways of connecting, so you're connected twice then. Can you confirm for me? You're connected twice? Yes, okay, so they're one and the same. All right, so Lois is owner. All right, now the mystery is solved. We couldn't give owner our credits last time, but we knew your phone number, so you still got credits. All right, you guys, if you don't have any questions for me, I'm not gonna keep us hanging out here for any longer on this. You got some highlights to start studying. Don't wait till the last minute. Also start to pay attention to activities. Some things still get uploaded even after Monday onto MindTap because we're working diligently to get everything going. We did have for face, torso, spine, the packet plus the test diagram separate, and we had wanted you to submit both of them. However, if you only submitted the packet and not the test diagrams, I gave you credit anyways because I know those test diagrams are inside the packet. But we wanted them submitted separately because it is just another way to study the diagrams for the test. I think that the hip, leg, thigh, hip, thigh, leg has the same thing, and I will check MindTap to verify. But other than that, I think we're done, you guys. I don't get to see any of your faces today, but I'm going to sign off. And we will see each other on Thursday morning, okay?
Okay,
Cool.
see you
Thank you.
Thursday.
Bye, I miss you
Bye.
guys.
Thank you.
Bye.